guys, so today we are going to be doing this recipe, and these are called Togo dogs. So this is basically Nancy's version of a corn dog, and of course Togo is her pet dog. So this recipe does require a few more items, but most of these are pretty simple things to get. So this is what the recipe calls for. We'll go through all of the items, and if you would like to read this, you can pause it here. Alright, so the ingredients that this recipe calls for, we have 3/4 cup of self-rising flour. This is 1/4 cup of self-rising cornmeal. Then we have 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of dry mustard, and 2 tablespoons of dry onion soup. Now my soup pack had just a little bit left, so I just went ahead and threw the rest of it in there. So this is just a little bit over 2 tablespoons. Then for the wet ingredients, we need 1/2 cup of milk and 1 egg. Then of course we also need the hot dogs. The recipe calls for 10 1-pound frankfurters. Mine actually only came with 9, so that is fine. You will also need sticks for your corn dogs. Now I don't have corn dog sticks, so I just used these kebab sticks that I had, and I cut them down to size a bit because these are extra long. And finally, the recipe calls for corn oil to fry the corn dogs in. I'm going to be using vegetable oil today just because that's what I have on hand. So I did go a little bit out of order how I prepped this, just because I feel like this made more sense for me. So the recipe said to dry off the hot dogs with a paper towel, so I went ahead and already did that, and we will come back and dust these with corn flour when we're ready to dip them. But until then, let's mix the batter. Alright, so starting off, we want to mix the dry ingredients all together in a bowl. So I'm going to add in the flour. We're going to mix in the cornmeal, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of dry mustard, and the 2 tablespoons of dry onion soup. Again, mine is a little bit over 2 tablespoons. So I'm just going to whisk this together to get it all incorporated. So now before I move on to the next step, I'm going to go ahead and start heating my oil. It says to heat a deep skillet half filled with corn oil to 375 degrees. So I'm going to get that going first. The next step says to break the egg into another bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and whisk this egg. Now we combine the milk with the egg and mix it. Alright, now we need to add this to the flour mixture and stir it until all the ingredients are well combined. Does make a very thick type of batter. Alright, so if you have not already, you need to dry each of the hot dogs, and then we are going to put the sticks into each one of them. Alright, now that we've added the sticks to these, now it says to dust each of them with the flour to help the batter stick. Alright, so I have some of my reserve flour here, and I'm just going to try dusting these with a little brush like this. And I'm going to make these one at a time instead of trying doing them all at once. So now I'm going to dip this into the batter. Now some people, I believe, do this in like a cup, but I don't know, the instructions said to do this in a bowl. I think we're going to have to move this to a cup. Okay, I'm actually doing this a little bit differently. Instead of doing a cup, I decided to try to batter this in a tray. I thought maybe that'd be a little bit easier with how long these hot dogs are. Alright, not perfect, so I'm going to take this over to my hot oil and fry it.
So just a side note, with the length of the hot dogs plus the stick, they were just way too long to fry in my pan, so you're actually going to see that I ended up cutting the hot dogs in half and then fried them as a mini corn dog. This was pretty much the only way to make it work with the particular pan that I had.
Okay guys, so I did have to pivot just a little bit, but these are how the corn dogs turned out. So what I ended up doing, my frying pan was just too small for the full length, so I ended up cutting the hot dogs in half and then making shorter sticks for them, and then battering and frying them. So now I have like 18 3/4 length type of hot dogs now. They're not quite like a full corn dog, but they're not quite like a mini corn dog either. So I hope these freeze well because I have way too many of these now. But let's do a quick taste test. All right, so this is what the corn dog looks like. And of course you can't have a corn dog without some ketchup and some mustard. But first I want to try it on its own. So let's go for a bite. Oh, sorry, I'm chewing with my mouth open. Flavor-wise, I'm not even just saying this. This might be one of the best corn dogs I've ever had. I really love the soup onion mix into it because you get just that little bit of that savory pop of onion, but it's not overwhelming at all. Just a little bit, almost more of like a savory kind of flavor where I feel like sometimes corn dogs can go a little too sweet. So now let's try a little taste with a little ketchup, a little mustard. That is so good, you guys. Yep, that is absolutely delicious. All right, guys, so what did I think of this recipe? There were just a couple instructions in there that I felt like either should have been in a different order or should have been done a different way. The hardest part was doing the batter. Now, it said to just use a bowl, but I think most places use more of like a long cylinder type of cup, and I think that would have worked well, but this was a bit of a thicker batter. If you are gonna do the cup method, I would say add more liquid to your batter to thin it out so you can actually dip it in a nice, cleaned, satisfactory way. So as far as the actual taste of these, I give these a 10. I think this was a delicious recipe. Wasn't too hard if you have all of the items and if you have a pan big enough to cook these in. Also, make sure your oil is not too hot. I did that with the first one and I completely burned it, so I did have to kind of like scrape the batter off that one, and I was able to re-dip it and re-cook it. Yeah, definitely be careful with your oil temperature because that was where I ran into the issue and kind of had a panic moment of burning one of them. But I think that this was a really great recipe. I would totally make this again. I would just make a couple little minor adjustments. Flavor-wise, taste-wise, like it was a really delicious corn dog, and I think this might be my favorite way how to do corn dogs now. The dry mustard and the dry onion soup mix in it just gave it a lot of like really good like savory flavors, and it wasn't an overly sweet type of corn dog. Of course, with the sugar in there, it does give it a little bit of that sweetness, but it's not nearly as sweet as like, you know, like those frozen corn dogs you can get at the store. Those kind of have a very sweet kind of cornmeal-y batter, but this one was definitely a little bit more on the savory side, and I actually quite enjoyed it. Flavor-wise, I would give it a 10, but if I'm ranking the entire thing, like how the process went, how the instructions were, all the ingredients, I would probably rank this one about, give it like a 7.5. I really enjoyed this recipe, and I definitely think it's one of the better ones in this cookbook. All right, guys, so that is it for this video. If you have a recipe you want me to try from this one, definitely let me know because you never know what recipe we're gonna try next. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Link is below, and until my next video, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.